The history of migration through Libya is a complex saga of shifting borders, changing politics, and human resilience. What was once a relatively open corridor for regional labor has evolved into one of the most dangerous and controversial migration routes in the world. The pre-2011 era, Libya as a destination. For decades, Libya was not just a transit point, it was a destination, labor magnet. Under Muammar Gaddafi, Libya's oil-rich economy relied heavily on foreign labor. Millions of sub-Saharan Africans worked in construction and agriculture. Pan-Africanism. In the 1990s, Gaddafi promoted Pan-Africanism, easing visa requirements for Africans to work in Libya. The TAP strategy. By the mid-2000s, Gaddafi began using migration as political leverage. He famously threatened to turn Europe black unless the EU paid him billions to police his borders. This led to the 2008 Treaty of Friendship with Italy, where Libya agreed to curb departures in exchange for investment. The 2011 revolution and the power vacuum, the Arab Spring and the subsequent NATO-backed ousting of Gaddafi changed everything. Collapse of border control. The central government disintegrated, leaving thousands of miles of desert and coastline unmonitored. The rise of smuggling. Local militias and criminal networks realized that human cargo was more profitable and less risky than smuggling oil or weapons. Outflow of laborers. Many migrants who had lived in Libya for years were forced to flee due to rising xenophobia and violence, pushing them toward the Mediterranean. 2014 to 2017, the height of the crisis. This period saw the Mediterranean become what many call a graveyard. Record numbers. In 2016 alone, over 180,000 people arrived in Italy via the central Mediterranean route. Deadly statistics, as smugglers shifted from sturdy wooden boats to flimsy, overcrowded rubber dinghies. The death toll soared. Thousands drowned annually. Search and rescue, SAR, operations like Italy's Mare Nostrum and later NGO-led missions saved hundreds of thousands of lives, though they were often criticized by politicians for creating a pull factor. Externalization of borders. Following the peak of arrivals, the EU and Italy specifically shifted strategy toward externalization. The Libyan Coast Guard LCG, Italy, and the EU began funding and training the LCG to intercept boats before they reached international waters. Intercepted migrants are returned to Libya and placed in detention centers. Human rights organizations have documented horrific conditions, including forced labor, extortion, and torture in these facilities. The route remains active, but highly fragmented. Migrants now face a triple threat: the Sahara crossing, the militias in Libya, and the increasingly sophisticated surveillance in the Mediterranean. The desert road to Europe. Musa was 22 when he left Kano with a small backpack and his mother's last blessing. Europe felt close in stories, just across the desert, across the sea, but the road was longer than hope. He crossed into Niger packed in the back of a pickup truck with 30 others. The Sahara was not sand like in pictures. It was silence, heat, engines breaking down miles from nowhere. He saw a boy collapse from dehydration before they reached Libya. No one could stop. If you stop in the desert, everyone dies. In Libya, they were herded into a warehouse. Smugglers demanded more money. Some were beaten. Some disappeared. Musa stopped counting the days. Then came the sea. At night they pushed 120 people into a rubber boat built for maybe 40. The Mediterranean looked calm, but water does not forgive mistakes. Waves rose. A woman prayed loudly. A child slipped from his mother's grip when the boat tilted. Musa would never forget that sound. By morning, a rescue ship found them. Not everyone was still breathing. Every year, thousands attempt this journey across the Sahara and the Mediterranean. Many make it. Many don't. The Mediterranean route is one of the world's deadliest migration paths. In recent years, thousands have died annually, with overall deaths in the past decade estimated in the tens of thousands. For Musa, Europe was not just a destination. It was survival. and the road there was written in sand and salt water, and to many unmarked graves. The waiting room of fear. Night in Libya does not feel like night. There are no streetlights outside the warehouse, only shadows and distant shouting. The air smells of sweat, rust and salt carried from the coast. Musa learns quickly, silence is protection. Eye contact is dangerous. Hope must be hidden. Libya has become a bottleneck in the migration route from West Africa to Europe. With political instability and competing armed groups, migrants often fall into the hands of smugglers and militias. Days turn into weeks. The men are given little food. A single piece of bread, sometimes pasta. Water from a plastic drum. Smugglers enter randomly, calling out names. If your name is called, it means one of two things: someone sent money, or someone did not. Beatings echo through concrete halls. Musa watches a young Gambian man, forced to court his mother being beaten. The price of the sea. One evening, the mood shifts. The guards are hurried, aggressive, focused. Tonight, that is all they say. The migrants are pushed into trucks and driven toward the coast. The Mediterranean lies ahead, black, endless. For many migrants, Libya is not the end of the desert. It is the beginning of the sea. Rubber dinghies wait on the sand. Designed for 40, loaded with 120. There are no life jackets for everyone. A smuggler distributes a small compass to one passenger. North, he says, just north. The engine sputters alive. The boat drifts into darkness. The Mediterranean. At first, there is silence. Only water tapping against rubber. Then the wind rises. Waves grow taller. The dinghy bends with every swell. Musa grips the edge so tightly, his knuckles pale. A child begins crying. A woman starts praying aloud in Arabic. Others join in English, Wolof, French, Igbo, Yoruba. Languages blend into desperation. The central Mediterranean route is considered one of the deadliest migration crossings in the world. Water begins seeping into the boat. Someone tries to scoop it out with a shoe. The engine coughs, stops. Panic spreads faster than the waves. The boat tilts sharply. A young mother loses her grip. A child disappears into black water. The scream that follows splits the night. Musa does not move. He cannot. Dawn reveals what night concealed. The boat sags, half deflated. Some passengers do not respond when shaken. On the horizon, a shape. White, large. A rescue vessel, operated by a humanitarian organization. Search and rescue ships patrol parts of the Mediterranean, responding to distress signals when they can. But not every boat is found in time. Flares are fired. Volunteers shout instructions. Life rings are thrown. One by one, survivors are lifted aboard, wrapped in silver thermal blankets. Musa collapses on deck. He stares at the sky, bright, indifferent. Around him, coughing, crying, silence. Some bodies are laid in a separate row, covered. Statistics do not show faces, but here, every number has eyes. The ship docks in southern Italy, likely Sicily. Ambulances wait. Police officers stand nearby, not hostile, but watchful. Southern Italy has been one of the primary landing points for migrants crossing from North Africa. Musa steps onto European soil. He expected something dramatic. Instead, there is procedure, names recorded, fingerprints taken, photographs snapped. He's handed dry clothes, and a number, not a job, not papers, not certainty, a number. The reception center is crowded but clean. Rows of bunk beds, shared bathrooms, fluorescent lighting that never fully turns off. Musa shares a room with 7 other men, from Eritrea, Sudan, Mali, Nigeria. For many migrants, arrival in Europe marks the beginning of another long process. Asylum applications, interviews, background checks and months, sometimes years of waiting. He attends an interview. Why did you leave? Are you in danger? Can you return home? He struggles to compress the Sahara into sentences. How do you explain silence that kills? How do you quantify shame? Months pass. He learns basic Italian words. Ciao, grazie, lavoro. Work. The reality of Europe. Europe is not what the stories showed. There are no immediate jobs, no instant prosperity. There is bureaucracy, Waiting. Paperwork. Southern Italy. The sun rises over the coastline of southern Italy. Fishing boats drift in the harbour. Church bells echo faintly across narrow streets. In a reception centre outside the city, Musa wakes before dawn. He has been in Italy for 8 months. He no longer dreams of the desert every night, but some mornings he still wakes up thirsty. Surviving the Sahara and the Mediterranean is not the end of the journey. For many African migrants, it is only the beginning of another kind of struggle, quieter, slower, but just as uncertain. Musa folds his thin blanket carefully. Around him, other men stir. Nigerians, Gambians, Ivorians, Sudanese, different languages, same waiting. On the wall beside his bed is a small photo of his mother in Kano. He whispers a prayer. When Musa first arrived, the rescue vessel docked in Sicily. He remembers the first thing he saw, flashing lights and officials in reflective jackets. He remembers the cold. Italy, through agencies like the Italian Coast Guard and humanitarian NGOs, processed the survivors quickly. Fingerprints, photographs, registration, under European Union law, specifically the European Union's Dublin regulation. Asylum seekers must apply in the first EU country they enter. For Musa, that meant Italy. For many migrants arriving by sea, identity becomes documentation. A case file, a number in a system already under strain. At the reception centre, Musa received a bed in a shared room, 2 sets of donated clothes, basic medical screening, a plastic card with an identification number. He did not receive certainty. His asylum interview would take months, maybe longer. The waiting time in the camp moves strangely. Breakfast at 8, lunch at 1, dinner at 7. In between, nothing. Some attend Italian language classes, organized by volunteers. Others sit outside, scrolling through phones, watching videos from home. Musa joins the language class. Mi chiamo Musa, he practices. The teacher smiles. For migrants, language is survival. Without it, work is scarce. Without work, dignity erodes. He meets Samuel from Ghana, Ibrahim from Senegal. They share stories of Libya, warehouses, beatings, ransom calls. They do not speak about the ones who did not make it. At night, some men shout in their sleep. No one laughs. 6 months pass. Musa's asylum claim is still under review. He grows restless. Through another Nigerian man, he hears about day labor in construction company. Cash jobs, no contract. He travels by train before sunrise to a nearby town. At a roundabout, men gather. Romanians, North Africans, West Africans. A white van pulls up. The driver steps out. 2 men. Musa steps forward. He is chosen. The work is hard, carrying bricks, mixing cement. 12 hours under the sun. He earns €40 for the day. No insurance, no protection, no guarantee of tomorrow. Across parts of southern Europe, undocumented and asylum-seeking migrants often fill the lowest tiers of informal labor, construction, agriculture, sanitation. Work that is necessary. Work that is invisible. Musa sends €30 home. His mother replies with a voice note. We are proud of you. He does not tell her his hands are blistered. The hidden struggles. Life outside the reception center is not simple. Some locals are kind. An elderly woman once handed Musa a sandwich and said, "Buon fortuna." Others are not. One evening, as Musa and Samuel walk back from the bus stop, a car slows beside them. Go back to Africa. Someone shouts. The car speeds off. Samuel shrugs, but his jaw tightens. Migration remains one of Europe's most divisive political issues. Economic strain, unemployment, and misinformation often fuel resentment toward newcomers. In the camp, rumors circulate constantly. They are closing centers. Deportations are increasing. Appeals are being rejected. Anxiety spreads faster than facts. After 8 months, Musa receives a letter. His asylum interview date. He barely sleeps the night before. In a quiet office, A translator sits beside him. An official asks questions. Why did you leave Nigeria? Were you personally threatened? Can you prove it? Musa hesitates. How do you explain hunger as persecution? How do you document hopelessness? He speaks about unemployment, about insecurity, about fear of armed groups near his region, about Libya. The official listens, takes notes, says nothing about the outcome. Asylum systems are designed primarily for those fleeing direct persecution or war. Economic hardship alone rarely qualifies. Many migrants fall into a grey zone between refugee and economic migrant. Musa leaves unsure. 3 months later, the answer arrives. His claim is partially rejected. He is not granted full refugee status, but he receives temporary humanitarian protection, valid for 1 year. It is not permanent safety, but it is legal presence. He exhales for what feels like the first time in a year. Building something, with temporary documents, doors open slightly. He secures steadier construction work with a small company. The pay improves. He moves out of the reception center into a shared apartment with 4 other migrants. The apartment is small, paint peeling, heating unreliable, but it is theirs. He buys a second-hand bicycle. He begins sending money home regularly. His younger sister returns to school. The roof in Kano is repaired. Remittances sent by migrants form a significant part of many African economies. Behind every transfer is sacrifice. Hours worked, meals skipped, exhaustion swallowed. Musa does not feel rich. He feels responsible. Some evenings, Musa walks to the sea. The Mediterranean looks peaceful. Tourists take photos at sunset. Children eat gelato along the promenade. He stands apart. He remembers the rubber boat, the screams, the boy who slipped into the water. He wonders if the child's mother survived. He will never know. Survivors carry invisible cargo, trauma that does not appear in statistics. He kneels and touches the water. It feels ordinary. That is what unsettles him most. Slowly, Musa builds a network. A local church offers free Italian lessons. An NGO helps migrants understand labor rights. He meets an Italian co-worker named Marco, who invites him to dinner. For the first time since leaving home, Musa laughs freely. Integration is not instant, but it begins with small gestures. Migration across the Sahara and Mediterranean continues despite increased patrols and policy changes. The drivers are layered. Economic inequality, climate pressures, conflict, population growth, and global labor demands. Footage of the Sahara. Abandoned trucks half buried in sand. Footage of rescue ships scanning the sea. Stricter border controls often shift routes, rather than stop movement, sometimes increasing risk. Musa, now wearing a reflective vest and helmet on a construction site between 2 worlds. 2 years after his arrival, Musa stands on scaffolding overlooking a growing apartment complex. Below, Italian workers shout instructions. Life moves forward. His phone vibrates. A video call from Kano. His mother smiles at the camera. His sister waves in a school uniform. He feels the distance and the connection. For many migrants, life becomes a bridge between continents. Never fully here, never fully there. Musa sends money. He pays taxes. He learns the language. He misses home. He dreams not of luxury, but stability. The desert keeps its silence. The sea keeps its secrets. But the survivors carry the story forward. In calloused hands, in wire transfers, in quiet determination. Musa locks his bicycle outside his apartment. He looks up at the sky. The same sky that stretches over Kano. Fade to black. Musa stands in the Fiumicino airport in Rome. He has been away for 7 years. He now has a permesso di soggiorno residency permit and a steady job. He carries a large suitcase filled with Italian chocolates, designer shirts found at outlets, and several smartphones. For the migrant who left through the back door, returning home is not a simple homecoming. It is a performance. To return empty-handed is to admit defeat. To return with stories of suffering is to be seen as ungrateful for the miracle of survival. Musa feels a knot in his stomach. He hasn't told his family about the nights he slept in the rainy outskirts of Forja, or the time he was cheated out of a month's wages by a contractor who knew he couldn't go to the police. The heat hits him the moment he steps off the plane in Kano. It is a familiar, dusty embrace. When he reaches his neighborhood, a celebration erupts. His mother weeps, holding his face as if checking if he is real. His sister, now a university student thanks to his wire transfers, looks at him with hero worship. The roof he paid for is sturdy. There is a generator he bought. He sees his sweat in the concrete of the walls. Within 48 hours, cousins and neighbors arrive. They ask for connections. They ask for €50 here, €100 there. When they ask about Italy, he says, "It is good. God is great." He does not mention the loneliness that tastes like cold pasta in a silent room. Musa walks through the market. He meets an old friend, Jibril, who is desperate. "Show me the way, Musa," Jibril begs. "I have saved $1,000. Tell me which chairman in Libya to call." Musa feels a flash of anger, then deep sorrow. The desert is a graveyard. Jibril, the sea is worse. Do not go. Jibril laughs, pointing at Musa's polished shoes. "You survived, didn't you? You have a car in Italy. You are eating well. Why do you want to keep the gate closed for us?" Having survived the trauma of irregular migration, the returnee is often seen as living proof that the risk is worth it. Their presence inadvertently fuels the very exodus they wish to stop. In the village, he is treated like a king, but he feels like an imposter. Even with his papers, he knows that in Italy, he's still the migrant. At home, he's now the Italian. He belongs to two worlds, but fits perfectly in neither. He visits the mother of the boy who slipped off the boat 7 years ago. He told himself he would do this. He sits on a low stool in her small compound. He gives her money more than he can afford. She asks, "Did he suffer?" Musa lies. "No, he went quickly. He was praying." He leaves the house and weeps behind a neem tree. This is the tax of the survivor. After 3 weeks, Musa's money is gone. The pressure to provide has drained his savings. He must return to the construction sites of Italy to refill the pot. As he boards the plane back to Europe, he realizes the back door never truly closes. You carry it with you in the way you look at the sea, in the way you count your coins, and in the heavy silence you keep to protect the people you love. The journey doesn't end when you reach the shore. It doesn't end when you get your papers. It ends only when the reasons for leaving are finally outweighed by the reasons to stay. Until then, Musa and millions like him remain bridges built of sacrifice, walking between two lives, forever crossing. The hum of the Boeing 737 felt like a funeral dirge to Musa, as the Italian coastline appeared beneath the clouds jagged, beautiful and indifferent. He felt the phantom weight of the back door swinging shut behind him once more. Returning to Italy wasn't a homecoming. It was a re-enlistment in a war of attrition. The construction site, Fiumicino's shadow. By the second week, Musa is back in the highway's vest, standing on a skeleton of rebar at a site near the outskirts of Rome. The 2026 construction boom, fueled by European recovery funds, has made the city a forest of cranes. But for Musa, it is a maze of precariousness. He works under a caporal middleman who takes a tax from his daily wage in exchange for the shift. Even with Italy's 2025 anti-caporalato decree, the shadows on construction sites are deep. The invisible toll. He's a ghost with a tax ID. He pays into a system that will never give him a pension. Building houses he will never be allowed to enter as a guest. The reality of the Dublin ghost. Musa's legal status remains a fragile thread. Under the Dublin regulation and the Transitioning Asylum and Migration Management Regulation of 2026, he is tethered to Italy. He cannot seek a better life in Germany or France. The system has fingerprinted his destiny to this soil. "You are a bridge," a fellow worker from Mali tells him over a lunch of cold bread and tinned sardines. But remember, Musa, people only walk on bridges. They don't live on them. In the evenings, Musa visits a makeshift camp near the Tibetina station. He finds a young man, barely 20, eyes bright with the same dangerous hope Musa had 7 years ago. "Musa, you want to go to Milan. They will catch you at the station. Your prints are already in the machine here." "Young man, I have a cousin there. He says there is work in the kitchens." Musa, reaching into his pocket, pulling out a small, worn notebook. "Take this. It has the numbers for the legal aid office and the name of a pharmacy that doesn't ask for papers for basic medicine. Don't run yet. If you run, you become a Dublin case forever. Stay, get your special protection permit and wait." "Young man, wait for what?" "Musa, for the reason to stay to grow larger than the ghost that is chasing you." Musa walks away, his coins jingling in his pocket, each one a heartbeat of the pot he's refilling for Amina, for the cow, for the house with the new roof. The fluorescent lights of the immigration office didn't hum. They hissed, a sound like a steady leak in a pressurized tank. Musa sat on the bolted-down plastic chair, his hands resting flat on his thighs. He didn't fidget. Fidgeting was for people who still had nerves to burn. After 7 years of pending, further review, and additional documentation, his central nervous system had settled into a permanent, calcified stillness. "Number 412, a voice crackled over the intercom. Musa stood. His joints felt like rusted hinges. He walked to window 4, where a woman behind thick plexiglass was sliding a manila envelope through the narrow gap at the bottom. The paper. He took the envelope. It was lighter than it should have been. It didn't feel like 7 years of his life. It felt like a handful of feathers. Inside, the residency card was crisp, the holographic seal catching the sterile light in a mock celebration of rainbows. He stared at his own face, on the idea face that looked back with a hollow, disciplined blankness. The cost, as he stepped out into the biting wind of the city, the victory didn't feel like a roar. It felt like a funeral. To get this plastic card, Musa realized he had been forced to commit a slow, methodical murder. He had killed several versions of himself to survive the process. The Musa who spoke, he had learned to swallow his opinions, his protests, and his voice. To be legal was to be invisible, and he had become a master of the silent nod. The Musa who dreamed, he had strangled his ambition to be an architect, settling 4 years of under-the-table demolition work just to stay fed, without leaving a paper trail. The Musa who remembered, he had successfully numbed the memories of his mother's funeral, which he had missed because a single border crossing would have meant an eternal exit. He looked at his hands, calloused, scarred and steady. They were the hands of a man who had traded his pride for a permit. He was home now, by decree of the state, but he was standing in the wreckage of his own spirit. "I am finally a person," he whispered to the wind, but as he tucked the card into his wallet, he knew the truth. He was a ghost who had finally been granted the right to haunt the sidewalk. The room is sparse, but clean. A single window overlooks a narrow Italian street. Musa 30 sits at a small wooden table. He looks older. There's a hardness in his eyes that wasn't there before, but also a profound stillness. On the table lies an official envelope. His fingers tremble slightly as he slides out the permesso di soggiorno. Musa 7 years, 2,555 days. He traces the holographic seal with his thumb. Musa, I arrived with a backpack and a prayer. I worked in the construction sites under a sun that didn't know my name. I washed dishes until my fingerprints faded. All for this. He looks at his reflection in the window. He sees the grey hairs starting at his temples. Musa, my mother died, but I couldn't attend her funeral in Kano, Nigeria. My sister, now a graduate and married, I only know through a screen. I gave Italy my youth, and in return, it gave me a name it finally recognizes. He stands up, walks to the window, and watches the locals below. For the first time, he doesn't pull back the curtain out of habit or fear. Musa softly, in Italian, sono qui. I am here. He picks up his phone. He scrolls to a contact. Home. He hesitates, then hits the call button. The first crucial step for anyone considering a journey to Europe is to genuinely and realistically confront the significant risks involved. Musa's story highlights the time he sacrificed, 7 long years during his youth. This wasn't just working hard. It was 7 years of his prime, filled with strenuous labor that physically took its toll, fingers fading from washing dishes, looking older with hardness in his eyes.